performer of this hour is going to be my co-MC, Alana Kansaku-Sarmiento. When I was talking about getting caught in a snowstorm on the way down here, it reminded me that for the first hour I was slandering her because she wasn't here, and I was suggesting she was drinking somewhere and having my fun. But that's not true. She got stuck in a snowstorm in some automotive imbroglio. So I apologize, sort of. Alana fished 4 seasons, has fished 4 seasons, 1 set netting and 3 drift netting. And she fell in love with this from the first time she bumped into it, and it's all been in Bristol Bay, and now she's going to entertain you.
I did not realize entertaining was actually part of what I was supposed to be doing up here. Thank you guys. So I'm going to read 3 pieces for you. And it's going to start silly, and then it's going to continue kind of heavy, and then it's going to end light. So this first piece is called Heart of Glass, and I have no parts of it memorized, so thanks for your patience. Extensions, extensions, extensions. Step right up and get your 24-hour extensions right here, folks. Right here is the only place in the bay, nay, the world, where you'll be begged to put your net in the water. Boy, do we have a lot of fish for you today in lovely New Shagak Bay. 30-mile-per-hour winds were bullying skiffs back to their camps, birds back to their bluffs, and fish into our nets. Everyone knows weather brings the fish in. Gets too sunny, we complain there are no fish. Gets too fishy, we complain there's no sun. We would have made Elvis and the Stones proud. Heck, we could have made it on Ed Sullivan, the way we were rockin' and a-rollin' in the wind and wave into what we all hoped would be a good payday, so long as we didn't get too greedy or too jumpy. Skippers on the bridge with the cleanest gear, but just as wet. One hand is bracing himself on the console and the other's on the wheel, legs wide, chin practically resting on his shoulders so that he can see the net as he keeps his head low in a vain attempt to keep the wind from ripping the hood of his gear off his dome. Down on the deck we were, with gear that is now almost as clean as the skipper's, thanks to the rain softening slime and scales off of our coats. So too our legs are set wide, knees slightly bent, our core muscles doing what little they can to keep us from toppling over with each wave as our hands grasp at the silver hanging from each diamond mesh. So too our heads bowed and slightly to the side in an attempt to keep the wind from ripping our hoods off of our heads and the water from washing down our faces. We're picking like madmen, 2 of us looking at nothing but what's directly in front of our faces until our hydro operator makes a comment about what's behind the boat. The lead line has risen out of the water to meet the cork line, sucked together in an embrace that has choked the life out of every fish caught in the web between them. For a short while, we were able to untwist the lines as they came on board with only some difficulty. It soon became apparent that we've rolled through the easy part of the net. We have 2 more shackles to go of rolled gear, each fathom tighter than the last. There's nothing to be done about it. We put our heads down and wreck our fingers and wrists trying to pull fish that have been corseted by the mesh, working both the mesh and line with our fish pick and hands. The sky is black, the wind is calling, the waves are waving, and time is but a concept. Suddenly, a clear and ringing tone appears from somewhere near the house. It is as abrupt as a light switch on an early winter morning or a fart in a church service. It starts with a thumping drum beat. Once had a love and it was a gas, soon turned out had a heart of glass. Seemed like the real thing only to find much mistrust, love's gone behind. I whip my chin up, confusion coloring my face as I scan left and right as if to locate the source of this mysterious noise, though it could only be coming from one place. In between, what I find is pleasing and I'm feeling fine. Love is so confusing, there's no peace of mind. If I fear I'm losing you, it's just no good, you teasing like you do. Is Blondie okay? Skipper asks as he emerges from the cabin, where I hadn't noticed him enter. Yes, Blondie is definitely okay. I smile as salt water melts its way over my lip and creeps around the corners of my mouth. The song had appeared like the sharp snap of a whip dipped in honey while we labored in a wet and bitter blanket. I'd like to think I had been doing better than treading water at that point, but the sound of music after so much silence brought me springing above the surface like Trident himself riding a throne of foam and waves. We untwisted the net over the course of the evening to a saccharine soundtrack out there in our beloved Black Bay singing, ooh, ah. Thank you. Blondie, everybody. This next piece is called The Ocean is an Empath, or The Midnight Zone. There is a sadness in the ocean, and it's eating me alive. As salt corrodes the vessel under my feet, I wonder if it isn't better to dissolve with it than for me to go on believing that I can float. There is a sadness in the ocean. It lives in the vastness. It is the vastness. It lives in human bones picked clean by sharks and fish and microbes. Humans who were lost to families, to bartenders, or at the very least to the sun, but found and welcomed with open arms by the deep. The ocean is a good place to be sad. There's a gladness in the ocean, and it's keeping me alive. As salt invades my nostrils and cakes on my skin, I rejoice. I am finally seasoned enough for the great banquet table of life. The salt brings out my dormant flavor, coaxing it to rise like a sleepy child, imploring it to look out the window and not sleep the day away. There is a gladness in the ocean. It lives in the crest of the wave, eagerly reaching for the sky, on tiptoes with elbows locked and fingers extended, insisting it can fly if it only wishes hard enough. It lives in the light that dances like stars on the surface of the sea, glimmering like jewels, each gentle swell lazily twinkling with the coy abandon of a pretty young girl pretending not to know why everyone stares. There is a thoughtfulness, a recklessness, a panic, a peace, a fierce anger, a wild despair, and an overwhelming joy in the ocean. Water is clear, yet the ocean is anything but. It filters light, taking on the hues that it cannot absorb as readily. Because it isn't prepared to absorb blue, it becomes blue. Sometimes other particles float in the water, reflecting other wavelengths. And when it is not blue, green, brown, or red, it is black. And how classically human of us to call the ocean blue when 90% of it is black. We, who called Galileo a heretic for claiming the universe did not revolve around us, who made the creator of the universe in our image, who insisted the earth was flat because that was all we could see of it, who claim that we are superior to all other animals because we fancy ourselves enlightened and believe we have something called a soul. The parts untouched by light, the 90% we cannot see, that is the ocean. And perhaps that is why, in spite of all the emotions our most empathetic friend possesses, I mostly see one. It is not bad, it is not evil, it is simply dark. There is a sadness in the ocean, and it's eating all the light. And when I cry my salty tears, it tells me it's all right. I'll swallow you, and salty wet will be forevermore, and no more shall you say that you belong upon the shore. Thank you. Thank you. And this last little poem is called Jumpers, and it was inspired by a moment that happened just this past just this past season, which also the first piece that I read, Heart of Glass, was also inspired by a moment that happened this past season. And both of these moments I'm referring to were somewhat surreal in nature, which thankfully I made a mental note to write about later. So here is Jumpers. Jumpers, jumpers, far as the eye can see. Don't look down, just look around, for wonders there will be. The sky is clear, the sun is high, the boats are circling round, for even when it comes to fish, what goes up must come down. Jumpers, jumpers, far as the eye can see, from our starboard to the next boat's port, 10 fish each for you and me. And from that boat's port on to the next, and so on and so forth, all the way to the horizon, money's skipping toward the north. Jumpers, jumpers, as far as the eye can see. Am I just hallucinating, or would you say that you agree? It's not just the gleam of the afternoon sun. It's not yesterday's booze coming back for a run. It's not just wishing, and it's not just hopes, and it's not just fun and games, but jumpers, sweet jumpers, are jumping once again. Thank you very much.